In this video, we will see the transactional currency segment setup process. We'll look at the business trigger, the data, the process and the idea screens, the output of the process. We will talk about dependencies on this process and exceptions if applicable. Usually, we will need to set up transactional currency segments when we are first setting up the system, and in the other case, or the usual other case, is when we have identified that we're going to start doing transactions in a new currency. Say, for example, we're going to start to record invoices in a new currency. However, we're not going to be doing reporting on that currency. All we're going to do is invoices, for example, and maybe some disbursements, and then we will convert the transactions in that currency to the reporting currency. But we will not convert transactions in other currencies to this currency, this new currency, because we do not need to do reporting on this new currency. As for the data involved, we need to know the calendar we're going to use for the segments we define. And we need to know, of course, the currency that we're going to add, and also the reporting currencies that have been set up in the system. We also need to know the ledger ID so that we can create these segments for that ledger ID. So the process is almost identical to configuring reporting currency segments. We need to go to the GL module. We'll go then to the segment screen, select the ledger, create the total and source segments for the currency. We can create the segments for the current year and prior year, or we can just do the current year segments and leave the prior year segments for later. Then we have to create the transaction types for the segments, and it is a good idea to add the beginning balance as well in case we need to do a beginning balance update for this. Although it's rare, because usually for transactional currencies we don't really need to keep an accurate opening balance. Looking at the process and the idea screens, we need to go to GL, then to segment definitions. We will go here, and now we're going to add a new segment. So let's assume that we're going to be configuring euros, so because we're doing purchases in euros. First thing we need to do is create the total currency segment for the year, current year. Then the naming convention, following the same naming conventions we have for the other segments, so that it is consistent. And the rest is identical to creating any segments. It's important that we use update by posting only, because these segments will be updated just via journal posting. After I add that, I will also add the current year euros source. So actually this is what I'm going to go here, and here we're going to type in the description, current year euro source. Select the calendar. So now we have the two, and then since we are doing reporting on the US dollar total, we need to also create a segment for US dollars converted from euros. So in this case, it's current year US dollars from euros. Using the same naming convention to be consistent. And then save. So in theory, you do not need this total segments for a transactional currency, because it would be equal. These two are basically equal. But it may be a good idea to create it regardless, so that if in the future euros becomes a reporting currency, we already have this total set up. Okay, so after we do that, we have to go and create the transaction types, and that's what we do here, as we did for reporting currency segments, if you have viewed that video guide. So we'll go in and create the transaction types in the same manner. So I created the two transaction types for current year euros, source and total. Now I'm missing the one for US dollars converted from euros for the current year. And the important thing here is also map that whenever this transaction type is affected, the total US dollars as well. So the total US dollars is going to be affected by all transactions in US dollars and other transactional currencies or reporting currencies. That way we have a full set of books in US dollars with conversions from all transactional currencies. Right, the same should be done with the beginning balance transaction types as well. And if we want to keep history for this, we can go ahead and set up the prior year segments as well. Once we have done this, we already have the transactional currency segments list updated, so we've loaded those segments. And now we have those transaction types that are associated to those segments set up as well, which means that we can then define journals to use these transaction types and update the segments for the transactional currency. And we can also run reports on those segments from the trial balance report screen or GL detail screen. So it's almost the same as setting up a reporting currency segment. The only difference is we don't need to set up additional segments to keep track of this currency, in this case euros, converted from other currencies. We're just going to keep the euro source and then make sure that the reporting currency, in our example US dollars, also we create a segment to track the US dollars converted from the euros. Thank you for viewing this video guide on transactional currency segments setup.